I'm geeked up and getting beyond belief because today's guest is someone I've been meaning to bring on to this podcast for a long time. Her name is Orna Ross, and she's a best-selling and award-winning independent author and poet. She writes and publishes literary, historical, family, murder mysteries, and inspirational poetry. That's not the only thing Orna is known for, though. She's also the director of the Alliance of Independent Authors, work for which the Bookseller magazine has named her one of the top 100 most influential people in publishing. She writes publishing guides for other authors and poets, and she's a wellspring of knowledge. The Alliance of Independent Authors, by the way, also known as ALLi, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to authors all over the world. They're celebrating their 10-year anniversary, and I'm so elated to share a conversation with the illustrious Orna Ross. Enjoy. It's been 10 years. Happy anniversary. How are you feeling about it now, Orna?
It's been 10 years. I am shocked. I can't believe it. It does not feel like 10 years. And in other ways, it feels like ALLi's always been here. I can't imagine. It's like when you have a child, you can't go back and on, imagine life before that. So, yeah, I'm really thrilled that we're still here and that we managed to make it to 10 years, that we're still growing, that self-publishing has become a fixture on the publishing landscape that isn't going anywhere and is only going to grow and develop, expand and carry on that expansion that's been happening for the last 10 years. So yeah, it's really important for us to mark this occasion and to celebrate, really.
Yeah, honestly, I just big applause for sure. Like, you can't be in a business or any walk of business for 10 years and not have done something right. You guys have been doing it really, really well and have led the charge here for indie authors. 10 years ago, you walked into the London Book Fair, about to forever change the landscape of indie author community. Walk me through the process. What led you from simply plugging into continuing education to founding a nonprofit organization?
Yeah, so I was looking for an association and to join myself as an indie author when I started out, and there was a sort of there were groups of great authors getting together and supporting each other personally, but something a bit more, that was non-profit motivated, but not free, so it was actually more professional and set up with a team and different departments, if you like, or desks as we call them, taking responsibility for different aspects of what I felt an association should do. And of course, there was no map here because the way in which indie authors publish is so different and was emerging just at that time. We were making it all up as we went along, kind of thing. So I had this thought that we really needed this association. I was having conversations behind the scenes with people like Joanna Penn and David Cochran and Jane Friedman, and asking their opinion and whether they would be supportive and would they come on board as advisors and all that kind of thing. And I better say, David said, "No, I'm a maverick. I'm on my own, but I support what you're doing, and go for it." And Joanna and Jane came on board as they were our first two advisors. And yeah, one thing led to another, and then we set up a nonprofit. And I decided we better launch this thing and make a little splash. So I said, where should we launch? Let's go right into the heart of the publishing business. And so the London Book Fair was the obvious place not the obvious place at all, but it was where I decided, okay, let's see if the London Book Fair will actually make a space for us and let us launch there. Interestingly, they were at that very time beginning to think about authors and the lack of authors in the fair, and beginning to think about setting up what they called Author HQ, and which still is there in the fair as well. So I spoke to them a bit about that and about self-publishers and so on, and they very kindly gave us a space, the old press room it was called, and said, all right, take that, have your launch there. So we invited Michael Tamlin from Kobo and Sam Missingham from the Bookseller, which is our equivalent of Publishers Weekly, and Tom from Amazon was over from Seattle, and he came and they all spoke at it, and it was just a magic day. It was just absolutely brilliant. And UK indie authors descended on it, but some indies even came over from the States for it, and spoke on. We had various panels on various aspects of self-publishing. So I think it was probably the first of its kind. Certainly, I'm not aware of any convention or conference about self-publishing before that. And the energy in the room was amazing, and I thought, okay, this is it then. And from that moment, it just took off. It made it clear very quickly that this wasn't going to be a small thing. We were very quickly went global from the start. We set up so that we could be global. We knew that self-publishing was a global business, that there's no such place as abroad, is what we always say here in the team. Everywhere is home for an indie author, and you just make it your home whenever you feel like moving in, kind of thing. So it's kind of grown and grown since then.
Did you ever have any doubts in your head 10 years ago as you're at that conference going, is this going to last?
Not at the conference, not at that point. I had a long night of self, exploration. I had actually left I ran a writing school and literary agency in Dublin, and I had moved to London, and with the idea that I would write full time. And I started self-publishing, and, I knew that when I took this on, I was basically not going to, be able to give my own writing and publishing as much attention as I thought I was going to before that. So I had a long night. I knew exactly what I was doing, and a long night thinking, do I actually want to do this? And, why? And all of that, just teasing it all out with myself. And, at the end of that night, I thought, yes, I do. I actually do, regardless. If it does mean a fewer books out of me, so what? I wanted to be at the heart. This was the biggest change in our business. I have been in writing and publishing since, I was in my 20s, and that's not today or yesterday. And this was the biggest change in our world that we were seeing for years, centuries. And I wanted to be at the heart of it. And I saw immediately what it meant for authors. I understood it wasn't just about an alternative route to market. It changed everything. It was about authors actually taking up the rightful place within the publishing sector, and that authors and readers could communicate directly, could sell directly. The author moved from being the last person in the sales chain to being the top, the reader and the author together. And I just loved what that meant. And of course, 10 years later, this is expanding more and more as we see authors moving into the creator economy, and there are all sorts of different platforms providing services for authors. We were moving way beyond the bookstore, or the online bookstore included. There are all sorts of ways now for authors to get their work to readers, and as blockchain and NFTs and all of these things become more commonplace, even more so. So the next 10 years looks like it'll be even more exciting.
That's really cool. All right, you started out 10 years ago. Of course, we've already established this. What was your original mission with ALLi? And have you deviated at all from that original mission, and how much was that?
Nothing's changed hardly at all. That's what's so interesting after 10 years. The kind of things we put in place were the most important. I would summarize it as ethics and excellence in self-publishing. So, and that leads to various then services that need to be provided if authors are to be facilitated to achieve excellence, and if ethics are to become an important measure in our industry. So yeah, it's still there. So we set up the Watchdog desk, which, at that time and still, there were so many people and services and companies that were exploiting authors. The whole vanity publishing sector was alive and kicking. It still is, and has many different shapes. And but then it was just almost like if somebody was self-publishing, that was the way they went, and they didn't know of any alternative. They didn't know about the new technologies. There are still, surprisingly, a lot of authors who still fall into that category, but fewer and fewer as information has disseminated through the community. So there was the watchdog aspect, the best and the worst self-publishers, listing them, getting a guide, and also the principles that would allow any author to evaluate a service and say, is this a good service for me where I am right now at this point in my publishing business? Is this what I need and what I want? And then the other aspect of it obviously was education. So seminars, workshops, podcasts, blog, any way that we could get, however the writer liked to consume their information, and we went that way. And we drew a line around ourselves that we were about publishing. We weren't about writing. And we figured there were enough people out there doing the writing thing that we would focus just specifically on the 7 stages of publishing, starting with editorial and finishing with rights, sales, and everything. There are 7 kind of stages in between, and providing people information about that. And from the start, it was important to us that good operators like yourself and many, many others who had authors in their hearts and who cared about authors, and who very often, let's face it, were authors themselves and running services as well, that we would have a membership for them as well. So we set up our partner membership right from the start, and partners have been part of it. And that's everybody from sort of KDP and Ingram at one end to the local freelance editor and everything in between. Again, divided across the 7 stages of publishing. So everything we do kind of filters into those 7 stages. And you see, all that stuff is evergreen. Ethics don't go out of fashion. Excellence doesn't go out of fashion. And the 7 stages of publishing are there, whether you're a huge corporation or a single micro publisher like an author. So because it's evergreen, it's still here 10 years later. And I reckon will be, 100 years after I'm gone, and ALLi's still doing its thing.
That's so awesome to think that you've established this legacy that will echo for generations past your lifetime. Has that ever set in and made you kind of think like,
Actually, this 10-year milestone has made me think a lot about ALLi's continuation. And I think the next 10 years will be very much about setting it up in such a way that it operates completely without any one individual being important to it. Because it grew very organically, it's messy in the background, and there's lots of tidying up to do for it to become a fully fledged. It's kind of at the toddler stage. It's on its feet, but it needs to get some firmer underpinnings. So I think that's what the next 10 years will be about, and then I'll get back to writing full time.
Yeah, that's, and I will cover that here in a minute, because I really want to know how you're doing that writing work balance, if you will. But you touched on something that I absolutely love. It's a free resource for everyone, and that's the ALLi's Watchdog list. That right there is just amazing. It's my go-to for finding out the reputation of an established company or service in the self-publishing industry. Because my thought is, you could search up such and such, and you're going to probably find just like this mixed bag of things. And you're not really sure if the person who's referring has, some ulterior motive of some sort, or maybe they were paid for something, but not the case with you guys. It's an enormous list. How did you ever manage to create such a deep registry? Because there is thousands on that list.
Well, all credit to John Doppler, who is head of the Watchdog desk. Credit to Michael Laron, your good friend, who contributes as well on the partner side, and to everybody else, Philip Lynch, who's also very involved in the partner end of things. So a lot of resource goes into that aspect of our work, because, as you say, it's so important. If the aspiring indie authors, aspiring self-publisher keys in how to self-publish in Google or any search engine, they're going to get a load of cowboys immediately, because those guys spend the money. They're there at the top of, on the ads. But when you run out of ads, our list is possibly up there. on the organics. And that's kind of really important that that is there. And also if somebody looks at a less than desirable publisher or service, we don't do this for everyone, but on where there are really obvious egregious and bad actor kind of things going on, when they find a particular publisher, if they're or a service, if they're googling them, then they'll probably get our report underneath it, which will kind of say how things really are. So yeah, it's just a lot of work really to and all of the things that we do. All there's no magic potion or anything. It's not complex. There's no rocket science here. What it is that most people don't have the time to give it the attention that it needs to kind of sift through some of these things, whether that is the ethics of AI, and whether authors should be using AI in their publishing or should, or whether anybody can tell them what they should or shouldn't do, or as you say, the services list or anything in between. That's why people have associations. It's so that they can kind of get a steer that is independent, that is a nonprofit that doesn't have a vested interest. That's otherwise associations wouldn't be needed at all. People could just make up their own mind. But making up your own mind on some of this stuff, yes, there are people who will do that. But lots of people don't have the time. They don't, literally, they need to be writing, they need to be publishing, they need somebody to say, yeah, these guys are okay, or no, they'll run a mile.
I have a crazy question off the top of my head. Has there ever been a situation where a company or service reached out to you and tried to buy a better rating from you?
Yes, more than once on many occasions. We also have got hate mail. We've also got cease and desist. We get legals. We get all sorts. Yeah. It's all fun and games over on that side.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I kind of figured probably something like that would happen, and I seen one time an acquaintance of mine had did a video where they pretty much were like, yeah, ALLi can just get bought out. Like someone can just buy their rating. And I'm like, they don't work that way. How do you know? I'm pretty sure that if some of these companies had the choice, they probably would just slip a little bit of hush money over to ALLi. Oh, yeah, give us that excellent rating there. So having spent years running self-publishing with Dale, I find it consumes so much of my time, and it often leaves me little time to do my favorite thing of writing and publishing. Then I look over at crazy Orna Ross, and I say crazy in a loving manner, running ALLi, which has so many more moving parts. It has an entire team to actually have to be supported. It's a nonprofit organization. There's so many things you have to do. What's the secret? How are you balancing your work life, if you will?
Yeah, I am. Well, big secret is I love what I do, and you're the same, so you do this because you want to do it. There's a part of you that is very satisfied by it, and sometimes I'm there, wow, we're still going, we did that, oh, we do, sometimes I don't know how it gets done, to be perfectly honest. But I do have, as a writer, because I am also, it's equal parts for me. I'm not just ALLi. My writing and my own publishing is very important to me as well, and I couldn't do one without the other at the moment. That's just the way it is. So for me, first, every day I write, and I kind of tip away at my own publishing and stuff, and that satisfies that side of me, and then she lets me go to work. So if it has to be first thing in the day, if it doesn't happen first thing, and it doesn't happen every single day, but I make that my aim. So yeah, then the balance works. If I don't get my writing time and I don't get my publishing time, then I get, things just teeter off balance. And as an author, in order to write and in order to do the work of publishing, production, and all of that side in particular, and be creative around marketing, you have to do other things that keep you in the right place to do that. And therefore, if I'm writing and publishing, everything's going well because I'm also exercising, I'm also meditating, I'm also doing the things to keep the show on the road. If I get over
Right,
busy
right.
in ALLi and I'm over there and I'm not writing, I'm not publishing, then everything kind of begins to fall apart a little. So I never let it go for too long. It happens, you pull it back, on you go again, and I think that's a cycle that we're all pretty familiar with as indie authors, because there's no such thing as an indie author, a working, functioning, successful indie author who isn't busy. It goes with the territory. You will be busy.
Yep, I guess it's what we signed on for, right? All right. As we start to wrap up today's podcast here, I really like to ask this of all the experts that come on: is what advice can you offer aspiring authors and self-publishers?
Decide whether you want to take this seriously or whether you want this to be a hobby. I think that's the first thing to decide. I'm going to go with those who want to take it seriously, because that's really who we're in existence for. Although we have lots of members who just publish one book, the heart of ALLi is the indie author who wants to make a business out of it. And that's the thing I'd like to say most of all. I think people talk about a writing career, but what is most important to realize when you decide that you're going to take self-publishing seriously, that you don't have a career, you have a business. And business is different. Now, it's a creative business, so it's not just profit driven. It's passion and profit in equal parts, and you've got to learn how to balance those. But you are in business. You don't have a career. You don't need a university, place, or somebody to give you a job, or somebody to give you a validation of any kind. You don't need it. You must do that for yourself. That's what a business person does. Some people call us entrepreneurs. Some of us are entrepreneurial, some of us are just small business people, and there is a difference. And you can succeed very well as a self-publisher with a small business mentality. But you must realize that you are in business. That doesn't mean you leave your creativity at the door. These days, creative business can be hugely creative, and you should bring your creativity to your marketing and your promotion and every aspect of your publishing. Creative business can be, superbly interesting. It's not a profit driven. It's not business as usual. It's not, very often authors recoil from the word, but it's quite different to be in business as an author. But you are in business. You don't have a career.
If you enjoyed today's video, hey, please make sure that you smash that like button. Of course, I'd love to hear from you inside the comments. Was there a piece of information Orna shared with you that you found very insightful? And by the way, you can pick up a membership to the Alliance of Independent Authors when you visit my affiliate link at dalelinks.com/ALLi. Again, that's dalelinks.com/ALLi. In the meantime, I'll see you guys in the very next video right over here.